Welcome to another episode of Should You Take That Case with your host, Lisa Wade, your friendly neighborhood legal nurse consultant, owner of Wade Nurse Consultants, and creator of our private LinkedIn community, the Attorney Medical Record Resource Group. That is where we get all of our stellar attorney guests. The goal of our show is to be a resource for legal professionals who pursue medical cases by sharing their experience and insights as defense or as plaintiff attorneys. You can catch prior episodes at www.wadenurseconsultants.com/blog on LinkedIn and on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Now here's the host of Should You Take That Case, Lisa Wade.
Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to a Medical Record Monday and a brand new episode of Should You Take That Case? It's me, your host, Lisa Wade, friendly neighborhood legal nurse consultant, medical record expert, and owner of, there we go, Wade Nurse Consultants. Think of us when you have tons of medical records you need translated into normal human language, easily understood by judges and juries. So visit us at wadenurseconsultants.com. But I am also the creator of a wonderful group, and that is the Attorney Medical Record Resource Group. As you know, that's where all of my wonderful attorney guests come from. We use this as an opportunity to get to know one another, and we're going to do that today with Victoria.schall. But first, we're going to scoot over to the comment section, see if anybody is visiting us live today. If you're an attorney, put an A into that comment box, put a P if you're a paralegal. But if you are a part of a group that I love, put a W for Women-Owned Law. It is a wonderful, groundbreaking group created to connect and advance women legal entrepreneurs. So visit us at womenownedlaw.org if that sounds interesting to you. Now, I want to thank all of you for taking precious time out of your busy days to be with us. If you're live visiting us, or even if you're catching us on the replay, thanks again for being here. And now I am going to introduce our guest tonight. That is Victoria.schall, also known as Tori, but professionally Victoria. She is an associate in the firm's New Jersey office where I'm sorry, it takes me a minute sometimes. I'm correcting myself. She is an associate in the firm's New Jersey office where she concentrates her practice on civil litigation claims for nursing home abuse and neglect, medical malpractice, and personal injury. And prior to joining Locke's law firm, she had an extensive experience in long-term care industry, including public policy for nursing home reform at NCCN-HR, the Consumer Voice, and as an elder law staff attorney for Legal Services of Northern Virginia. And Ms. Schall moved to New Jersey in 2010 to concentrate her practice on nursing home abuse, working at preeminent firms trying nursing home and personal injury matters. But outside the office, Ms. Schall is a volunteer board member with Semper Fido, a Marlton, New Jersey-based nonprofit training shelter and rescue dogs as service dogs to meet the needs of veterans suffering from traumatic brain injury and or post-traumatic stress disorder. And now I bring to you Victoria.schall. Please forgive me, Victoria.schall. Oh my gosh.
That's right. I've been called a lot worse.
Well, thank heavens it wasn't any worse today. All right.
That's all right.
As I tell everybody, I'm a better legal nurse consultant than I am a talk show host. So thank you for coming and putting up with me, Victoria.
No worries. You're fantastic. Thank you, Lisa, for having me.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're going to jump in and get into all the information you have about how you manage medical records as part of your cases. But first, tell us more about you. How did you
Sure.
get into this area of practice? What keeps you going? And even what got you to be an attorney? That's a lot to go over, but just get started and tell us all about you.
So it kind of all smushes together a little bit. So I had started out volunteering in facilities when I was younger, and in in high school and then in college, mainly in college at the time. And everybody loves to put my cute little face into what's called community relations, where where you go and sit with residents and take residents to and from activities, and those sorts of things. And I would start to see residents have issues or families complain about certain things. I didn't understand the industry. I didn't, I was, like a whopping 19 years old at the time. And so I would go back to the staff and I would tell them, hey, look, so-and-so said this doesn't look right. There's complaints about this. And they would inevitably usher me very unkindly out the door. So I went to assisted living facilities because at the time there was a big push for assisted living facilities, claiming that they were better than nursing homes. They're not nursing homes. They're better than nursing homes. And that was so not true either. And then, then I went to retirement community and I worked there as well. And I asked to do a rotation through their business department as well as their care department. And really, frankly, I sat down and said, okay, I was a business major in college. And I was like, I thought I'd get into operating my own facility to kind of run it from the inside out. But I said, okay, I need to sit down and come up with one sentence that really describes my experiences with the long-term care industry. And that one sentence was, there is no connection between business and care. And when that came out, I said, SHIT. I'm not sure about, your podcast and cursing. So I'll just spell it out. But yeah, I really went at that point, and I went back to my law professor that I had at the time. She said, take an extra law class while you're here, see whether you like it. You liked my class, and and see where that takes you. So I did, and I really enjoyed it. And I said, okay, now what? So I went home and I worked for two attorneys for about 2 years that did, one did construction litigation, the other did criminal defense. I said, I don't want to do what you do, but, on a daily basis, but I do want to figure out how I can combine this strange connection that I have with the elderly and law. So I went to law school, and when I was there, I had an opportunity to do an externship through that organization that you mentioned, NCNR. They're the National Citizens Coalition for Nursing Home Reform. And when I worked for them, I was a public policy intern. But at the same time, I learned more about the system, where money comes from for facilities to be paid, how facilities make their money, and what happens specifically with regard to care, the federal regulations, how that trickles down to the states. And I helped them to pull together a national Faces of Neglect project that we were able to take to throughout Congress, and give to various congressmen for them to understand, what we were really talking about when it comes to abuse and neglect of residents in facilities and long-term care facilities. NCNR is an organization that helped to put the federal regulations in place back in the 80s through what's called the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1987. So they're one of the most regulated industries in the country, but rightfully so, as they were able to do whatever they wanted to do until they were highly regulated. And I think we all saw the Dateline investigatory shows back in the 80s that showed us what was really going on at the time. And, while there have been changes, there's still a lot that's going on and a lot that still needs to change, as as was really brought to light within the last couple of years. It's things that my friends and I have all discussed and know about. But, it's really come to light again as, continued issues are happening throughout facilities across the country. So I worked for them for both my summers when I was in law school, and then I went home and I worked as an elder law staff attorney at Legal Services in Fairfax County. And I was doing everything from housing, family, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, to nursing home discharge cases, invalid discharge cases, where they were taking residents and discharging them to seasonal homeless shelters off season in order to get rid of Medicaid residents, as opposed to taking in more Medicare residents where they get a higher reimbursement rate. So I still wanted to do nursing home abuse and neglect litigation. And I had graduated from law school in 2007. And at that time, the market was really difficult to do this kind of work and for people to take on associates. But I ended up taking a couple more bar exams and coming up to New Jersey. So I'm licensed in Virginia, DC, Pennsylvania, and Jersey. Mm-hmm. And I moved up to New Jersey in 2010. And I went to go work at a firm where the gentleman looked at me and said, look, I'm tired of insurance companies telling me how much my cases are worth. I want to start trying nursing home cases across the state. Let's pick out, a set number of cases, and let's, regardless of whatever they're going to put on it, unless it's actually a good value on the case, then let's go try it. And it was a phenomenal, amazing experience that we had in doing that. And I learned so much from it. And so I've been trying cases across New Jersey for the last 12 years, over 12 years. So, it's been absolutely fantastic, amazing experience. And this is really, really about 95% of what I do. I do take on some medical malpractice and some, personal injury matters, but really just mainly nursing home abuse and neglect. So that's really how I got into all of this. And I know it's been a long time, but at the same time, it's been a very rewarding and really, I'm not sure what else I would do.
Oh boy. Well, it looks like you have taken on long-term care, from the inside out and found your place in the world. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, I always turn back to it at the end of the day. It's something that I can always look back to and say, why? Because sometimes everybody has rough days, right? And you say, why am I doing this? And without fail, it always comes back to, being able to try to help people and being able to try to advocate for people, particularly after something very bad has happened, and to hold others accountable for what they did or didn't do when they should have done what's right.
All right. Well, thank goodness. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Well, when those cases come your way, how do you pick or choose or decide if it's a case you should take, that it's a viable case?
So there's a lot that goes into it. I would say, some of the top things that I look at is, you want to make sure you have a good family. It's really difficult to take cases where you have families that didn't visit or weren't involved in the care and treatment of their loved one at a facility, to turn around and then, try to present that to a jury, because most of the time the resident has passed away, and then a jury is going to say, well, who gets the money, and where does this go? And it ends up going to this person that never saw, didn't really see what was happening, didn't make complaints, didn't have any issues that they brought up. So that can be really tough to have. So you need to have a good family that was involved and cared about their loved one that was in the facility. You have to have a bad facility. So there's a couple of ways to find out, who are our bad actors, and without fail, it turns out to be generally the same ownership. And it's awful to say, but it turns out to be the same ownership structures that are operating facilities that are operating at a low level of quality of care. Every now and again, you do hit other facilities where it's not necessarily systemic issues, but you have incidents that do occur at facilities like that as well too. But your bad actors, so there's other ways to know who that might be. You can go on to CMS's Nursing Home Compare and look at some of that information, but that's actually information sometimes that's skewed a bit too, based on what's reported back to Medicare. But you can go there. New Jersey is very fortunate. We do have access to, through an Oprah search, to get a licensure file, as well as state surveys, and seeing where there might be systemic issues that are related to your client, in addition to what may have happened to others there too, that put the facility on notice that they were having problems and didn't make changes. So you need good family, bad facility, and you need a bad injury. It can be really difficult because there's things that happen in facilities all the time that are considered, not good care. But whether you can bring that lawsuit or not is difficult. And sometimes you have to look at, valuation wise, can I get over the hump of what it's going to cost me to handle this case from a cost perspective, in addition to having a 1/3 fee, and then a contingency fee, and then having liens. So in every one of our cases, we have Medicare and or Medicaid liens, as well as any other potential federal, liens through ERISA, or other liens that are applicable to the case. So, I don't like taking cases just because, I want to make $1. I want to make sure that then a family member is bringing it in order for them to actually see something at the end of the day. That if, I don't want to drag somebody through 4 to 6 years of litigation, so they turn around and, have to pay everything back to somebody else. So it can be tough to reject cases sometimes because the valuation on it may not be of a higher level that can get over some of those humps. But there's other avenues for advocating for the resident and what occurred throughout the state too. So those are my big 3 pitch.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like you do your research.
I do. I like I said, when a client calls in, I'm online, I'm looking up the facility itself. If I don't already know who it is, I'm talking to them about, what do they know? What did they see? What did they complain about? What do they feel like the facility failed to do? And really looking at it from that perspective, literally from that first phone call with the family, as to, what would a trial look like on this case, without even seeing medical records at that point. But then, moving forward and getting medical records and doing a review based on that, and whether I can get an affidavit of merit, and what does that claim necessarily look like?
Okay. Well, hey, that's my next question. When all those medical records start rolling in, what kind of process or particular protocol do you have to attack them and get what you need from them?
Right. So this is kind of my favorite part. And it's something that I do myself. We get the records, our office gets the records, and then I sit down and I piece that puzzle together. Right. For me, it's truly trying to tell the story of what happened to this person, through using the records as to what they say happened, whether that be the nursing home itself, the ER records, the transport records. So EMTs and transport services provide some of the best information. I know man, they really throw some of these places under the bus. So I know it's bad, but at the same time, you're like, oh, thank God for you. And because it's somebody actually telling the truth, and it's somebody that's really doing their full assessment and doing their job in what's going on for that resident at that time, and laying that picture out. So I typically get whatever nursing home, assisted living, group home records of the place that I'm looking to potentially sue, the hospital records, the subsequent hospital records, and then EMT transport records. Those are the main sets of records. And obviously that can depend on the type of claim itself, and whether I need to get the records before the resident went into the nursing home too, as to whether I need to really find out whether there was just a bad assessment done by the nursing home when the resident first went into the facility. So.
All right. Well, it sounds like you have a plan and a procedure. Now, when you dive into those records, is there something you find that is very puzzling, difficult, frustrating, or a pet peeve when looking through all of these records?
Yeah, sure. Pet peeves. Let's start there.
Or a list.
No, I mean, look, I think anybody who does this kind of work will tell you that there are certain things that we always look for. Obviously, you want to find out whether they're doing, whether they're meeting the standard of care, the nursing standard of care. I mean, that's the general gist, right? Without that, you aren't really getting through the door. So what you're looking at is whether there were proper assessments done, whether a care plan was created to meet the needs of the residents based on what their risks are. And then, whether that care plan changed based on anything that happened to the resident, what they knew happened to the resident, or whether there was a failure of communication between them and other areas within the facility itself. So one of the things that I make sure that I do is I'm comparing certain sections to one another, right? So a nursing home chart has somewhere between 13 and 16 sections to the chart, right? So as I'm looking at it, I'm paying attention to not only what the nurse's notes say, not only what their assessments say, but I'm also really focusing on what physical therapy and occupational therapy and speech therapy also have to say. As well as any consults, because those they oftentimes are in-house providers, but they see things, they note things, and they're supposed to communicate with each other too. How I look at a nursing home case is truly I attack it from a couple different perspectives, but mainly that this is a team. That this is a team of providers that are supposed to be working with one another, right? And what's the most important aspect of a team is communication, right? And that communication has to go from point A to point B. So if you have physical therapy that's documenting umptia, then nursing needs to know about that. And they'll often say in there, told nursing staff, called physician, advised physician, right? So, it's, and then nursing wants to say they had no idea that this was a problem. And it's like, meh, no. You did. So it's, it's a matter of paying attention to all of the sections of the chart. And I think, particularly also a section called the MDS, which is a minimum data set. And it's information that has to be reported to Medicare for Medicare reimbursement that is filled out under penalty of perjury. Section Z has a penalty of perjury clause. So really, you got to go back through that too and seeing what they're reporting to Medicare and why they're reporting it to Medicare, right? So there's certain reasons why they do what they do. But if it doesn't pass the smell test, there's certainly things to be had and to be told about what was really going on there. And then you look at it from a systemic standpoint of not just why this nursing staff with this resident, but what was really going on there as a facility as a whole, and why it wasn't just this failure to this one resident, but they're putting anybody that goes into that facility at risk based on understaffing, undertraining, underpaying.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, there's supposed to be somebody there connecting all of the dots.
Right.
Yeah. So that's important.
I will say the biggest pet peeve that I have, though, is fraudulent alteration of records.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
No.
So that's one that really just chaps me a lot when I see that, because, it's one of these things where you get people that, I don't know, like how dumb people think I am sometimes when I'm looking at this stuff, but or how much they think they can get away with. But there's certain changes that are made and made to charts pre-suit versus litigation, and I'm really truly blown away by that. And so I do a lot of comparison of the charts that I get. Sometimes families will go get records, and of course they're missing about 75% of what they should have. Mm-hmm. Then I go request the records, and oftentimes, I think this may be a later question that you may have, but one of the issues that can happen, particularly with nursing homes, is just getting a complete chart, right? And so in New Jersey, there's a few ways that people do it. The way that I do it is if I'm not getting a chart from a nursing home, because we have an affidavit of merit statute that requires a professional to have reviewed the records and state that there's enough to file a complaint, I file a pre-suit litigation action to compel them to provide me an entire chart. And you can also request a deposition from a corporate designee representative based on why they haven't given you that complete chart or where the missing records are. So, that is something that really, really bugs me. But oftentimes that chart that I end up getting pre-suit, like I said, is still missing things. And then, sometimes it's different than what I get when I'm actually in litigation. And truly, it becomes gosh, it becomes just a beat your head against the wall as to why do you even do this? Because sometimes there's not even an issue when it comes to what they're changing, but they changed it anyway, thinking that there may be an issue to it. And you're like, well, now there is.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Right? I'll give you an example. I had a case that started off as it was a resident that had a fall, and he had a head injury, and he had a surgery to go along with that. But he came back from the hospital, and he had a small stage 1, stage 2 pressure ulcer that then became a stage 3 and then a stage 4 pressure ulcer, as over this 4-month span of time that this gentleman had left in his life due to what happened. And, the facility changed the chart in the interim admission that he had, where they just started making up weights and filling in valuations on how much he was eating or how much input or output he was having. And the way that I found this, which is just crazy to me, is I was sitting there one day and I had filed my 411 application. I get my chart from counsel, and of course I'm looking at that set of records, and then I'm like, well, wait a minute. There's in nursing homes, there's only 3 shifts of staff that are providing care and treatment, right? So you have 11 to 7, 7 to 3, 3 to 11, right? And as I'm looking at this, there's 4 rows of initials. I mean, they're just straight initials. It wasn't like valuations and then an initial at the bottom. It was straight 4 rows of initials. So I actually, at the time, I was like, is this me? And I went to go look at one of my people, and I was like, they didn't change how many shifts there are, right? Like, there's still 40, right? It's like, I don't think they changed the shifts. And it was like, all right, well, let me go back and take a look at this other chart that they had sent the family, and and compare it to that. And I'll be darned, they just, one nurse had an initial that went into the line below it. And so it had a larger initial. And so they must have thought that they had to fill in all of that. And then as I started going back through both of those charts, like I said, they made up weights, they made up input output values, they made up turning and repositioning schedules. I mean, it was really bad. So, even though it wasn't the best of claims against them on that portion of the pressure ulcer case, I had them on fraudulent alteration of the records. Oh man. So that took that case from a fall head injury death case to a fall head injury death, pressure ulcer sepsis death, fraudulent alteration of the records case.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
The records are crucial, and it is. So for me, the biggest pet peeve is knowing that, I mean, obviously it's good for the case from a legal standpoint, but knowing that they've made that fraudulent change to what's there.
Well, when I was in the nursing home, I kept up with my documentation. You can make a mistake, but you just cross it out and say you made an error.
That was an error, right?
Again.
That's right. You document that there's an error, and then you start again and do what's right. But they're just not. They're not even, because they're not actually doing it, right? So the question is I think this in the work that you've done, but if it's not documented, it's not done, right? You've heard that phrase, I'm sure, as well as any listeners have heard that phrase too. And the reason is because it's actually not done. So
it's one everybody wants to be done, and then it's another thing to put false things that were done.
Right, exactly. So
just mess up.
That's the pet peeve.
Oh boy. Well, you are full of such good information and wonderful detailed experiences. And I'm so glad you're here sharing today. I'm just trying to see if there are any more bits of knowledge that you can give those newbie attorneys or veteran attorneys out there deciding if they should take these kinds of cases like you take.
Yeah, I mean, look, case selection is the biggest issue for most attorneys that do what I do. So if you're just getting into this line of work, please, speak to myself, speak to any other attorney that is mainly practices in nursing home abuse and neglect, because you can oftentimes get yourself stuck down a rabbit hole on something that's not really going to give a payout on the end. or you're not really looking at the claim in the way that you should be looking at it to increase the value of the claim itself. So much of what we do, we look at, particularly how to increase the valuation of the case. Oftentimes because we're limited in some of our, particularly in damages. And then on top of it, in certain states, you're limited on how much you can even get, even though you're already limited on damages. So, making sure you understand the law and how the law applies. In New Jersey, we've had quite the roundabout having to deal with residents' rights violations, and what applies, what doesn't apply, how that's looked at by the court, whether you can get what's called fee shifting for violations of the residents' rights statute, and how does that look for your case, and how can you have that apply. So if you don't know, if you're doing this, if you're looking to get into this work, make sure you're talking. And even once you're in it, we all talk to each other, we all lean on each other to gain advice on what to do, how to do it. Valuation of cases can also be tough too, and in trying to really figure out. I know it was just having a conversation with some friends of mine the other day about valuation on a sexual assault case in a nursing home, and really what that valuation is, given, what the facility knew, what they didn't know, what they did to try to help, and what they ignored. It's truly, case selection is the number one most important thing to pay attention to in these cases. Again, looking at it, starting with the main three things that I started with at the beginning of this session, but also then, paying attention to what your people are saying. You don't want to be surprised, 3-4 years down the road with information that you weren't really aware of or didn't really think through, earlier. So make sure you're doing that. Again, like I said, I review my own medical records. I do that for certain reasons. Obviously, like I said, to look for the fraud issues, but also so that I know what I'm really talking about, and I'm prepared in my depositions and in handling the case to hit that case from any perspective. Oftentimes you sit in depositions and somebody looks at you and says, I don't know, maybe that's somewhere else in the chart. And it's very easy to turn around and then be like, okay, let's turn to page blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's there because your chart, right? You know what you're looking at and how to handle that particular issue to combat, BS types of arguments or statements by people. But I think also the other thing is just, I know there's a special phrase for it. It's evading me right now, but it's, prepare, try to prepare for the unexpected. Mm-hmm. Right. And the best way to do that is, again, learn the industry, learn the systems, learn, what's really going on in these places and how they handle things. I'll give you another example. One of the biggest, pet peeves that I have too is getting residents psychiatric care in facilities and nursing homes, and properly assisting residents who actually do have psychiatric issues, the care and treatment that they need, because the staff really isn't trained to provide those types of services. Mm-hmm. So when you have a resident that needs assistance with their daily activities of living, bathing, dressing, cleaning, all those sorts of things, and then you need more care for psychiatric issues, how is the staff trained to try to help somebody in that way? So example was a case that I had with a woman who fell. She's, having a psychiatric episode. She's screaming, she undresses and is standing in the middle of her room. And the aide comes in, and rather than stand in front of her and talk directly to her to try to help her to usher her back to her bed, the aide gets behind her and starts trying to push her towards her bed. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, as a normal person, having somebody stand behind me trying to push me anywhere is not likely to end in a good scenario. But for particularly somebody that's going through what she was going through, she pulled away from this person and fell, and she hit the floor, and she fractured her arm and her leg.
Ooh.
And in doing so, the aide then picked her up, put her back into bed, put a sheet over her, and walked away and didn't tell anybody about what happened. Right.
Oh, boy.
So here I am taking the deposition of the aide and asking her about, about being trained on how to work with residents that suffer from psychiatric issues. And, and I started off by saying, okay, so, and I'm thinking I'm being all smart because I'm going down that path. And the first thing she says to me was, that wasn't a fall.
Oh, boy.
So, right, be prepared for the, expect the unexpected, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that one took me aback. And I think the defense attorney saw my face when that happened too. Cause I was like, are you kidding me? So, you ask the next question of, okay, so let me get this straight. My woman was standing and then she's on the floor and you don't consider that to be a fall. Right. So, you're trying to go through that particular aspect too. So, it's like I said, understanding and being ready to deal with the unexpected type of answers that you're going to get when you start approaching people about a lot of things. I think one of the other things that people also do is underestimate the power that is within the aide's hands. Mm-hmm. And really, them knowing, even though they may have quote unquote forgotten what was going on with that particular resident on that particular day or over that period of time that they were a resident there, mm-hmm. They still know what was going on in the facility at that mm-hmm. time. And I think that can be overlooked and really needs to be addressed when you're looking at these cases too. It's not enough just to have the aides sit, because I've had people say in the past, well, when I take these aides depositions, they don't know anything and they don't remember anything. And and I'm like, okay, but maybe they don't remember your person or specifically what happened with your person, but maybe they know what happened during that time and what was going on at that time. And systemically, that's how you start to build your case. Obviously you can go after the short staffing and the numbers and the data through the DON, but also not forgetting about the aides and their experiences, aides and nurses and their experiences in these facilities.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy. It's been wonderful having you here. You are full of such good insights and you've been sharing your knowledge and experience.
Yep.
And I think we've got time for a little Q&A. Are you ready to answer some questions?
Ready.
All right. Well, while everybody out there is even on the replay, getting your questions together and getting ready to put them in the comments section, I'm going to have what I call a small commercial break and tell you a little bit about Wade Nurse Consultants and what we do here. And then we're going to get right back to Victoria. All right. Now, without a review and summary of the medical records, it could be harder for you personal injury or med mal attorneys to know if you should take that case. And here at Wade Nurse Consultants, we give attorneys a 1 to 2 page synopsis and opinion regarding the merits of those types of cases, using my 30 plus years of nursing experience to make quick work of medical case screenings. So if you are watching this and you have your own nurse paralegal on the payroll, this isn't for you. But if you have a large backlog of medical case screenings and you need to get them handled, this is what you do next. Right now, we're offering a free 20-minute medical record strategy call to help you hone an efficient, timely, and cost-effective routine around your medical cases. And inside the description box of this YouTube channel, you'll find a link to click and schedule that consultation. And now let's get back to Victoria. All right, Victoria, let's see. Do we have any questions in the comment box yet? Not yet. So, not yet. So this happens occasionally. So I have a plan. I will add your contact information to the description box of this YouTube channel, and people will reach out to you when they have questions. Does that sound good?
I absolutely welcome it anytime.
All right, but I have one question for you.
Uh-oh.
Will you do this again?
Yeah, sure. Of course. I will, Lisa.
All right, excellent. Well, I'm so glad you've been with us. I think we're winding down for today since we don't have any questions right now. So Let me remind our viewers, live or on the replay, like our show, subscribe to this YouTube channel, Lisa Wade LNC. And if you have any questions for me about legal nurse consulting services, catch me, Lisa, at wadenurseconsultants.com. Just email me. But how about we get ready and you catch us next week, Monday, 5:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a brand new episode of Should You Take That Case? And thanks again for being here, Victoria.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks for watching and listening to another episode of Should You Take That Case with your host, Lisa Wade, your friendly neighborhood legal nurse consultant, owner of Wade Nurse Consultants, and creator of our private LinkedIn community, the Attorney Medical Record Resource Group. That is where we get all of our stellar attorney guests. The goal of our show is to be a resource for legal professionals who pursue medical cases by sharing their experiences and insights as defense or as plaintiff attorneys. You can catch prior episodes at www.wadenurseconsultants.com/blog, on LinkedIn, and on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel and sharing this show with others.